Hey guys, MujK here. It's been about 5 weeks since I last did this, and part of the reason for that is because of the holidays. Things got busy, but also it's getting kind of hard to trim it down to top 10 because we're getting so many new units in the game. It's getting hard to trim it down because there's so many actually viable units that are out there that I don't want to make it seem like these are the only 10 that you can really use. So take it with a grain of salt. It's just my own personal opinion. I did not consult the JP gods. I did not do a ton of research into what other people are thinking. This is just my own personal experience, so just consider it one data point out there in the ocean of data. So yeah, that's my disclaimer. I wanted to keep it as a non-whale edition for jobs 1 and 2 only because a lot of people are starting to get job 3s now, but there still are newer players who want to, kind of have a head start with job 1 and 2 and not just think about the long term. So we'll keep it this way for now, but we'll see in the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it because I need to make this pretty quick. So number 10 is Raimi, and the reason for that is because when I was making this top 10 list, I wanted to think about what units would I actually want to bring to a tough fight. And with him, you have an elite leader skill, which is a 50% physical attack boost to fire allies. And there's only one other unit that can do that, and frankly he's a little bit trash right now, Catanova. We got the unbuffed version of him from Japan apparently, but anyway, enough about him. The reason Raimi is good is because he has that leader skill, plus he's just solid all around on his own. He has two very solid jobs, ninja and martial artist, especially martial artist, where basically he has everything he needs to be effective. What's a little bit unique about him is that he can use all the martial artist stuff, but instead of like toughness, which would give a little bit of HP, not really worth it in my opinion, he can use ninja stealth instead and get that extra mobility. So that makes him a little bit unique, and he's able to get in range to do the things that he needs to do. He doesn't have anything really elite about him, but he's just solid all around, which is why he's number 10. I'm not going to go into too much detail because you can read it on the page. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see myself bringing him into a fight. He wouldn't be the star of the fight, but he would definitely contribute, especially with that leader skill. Number 9 is going to be Feng Liu, and that's frankly because he's just so powerful. And even if I suck with using him, I've heard so many people use him for like even the Sabaretta event, the crazy event that shall not be named. People were able to successfully use him to kill that higher content, so he definitely has some potential there, especially offline, because you can control things better. You can control your team comp, your supports. Don't get people in the way, don't get them hitting the enemies that he's about to target. Online's a little bit of a different story because people don't know what you're doing, they don't know what they're doing sometimes, and they can get in the way or whatever. So my experience has largely been on multiplayer, and it hasn't been good. But from what I've seen and what people are saying, he's very good offline if you know how to use him. And aside from Swift Charge, he has like all the power that he needs from Job 2. Even passive wise, he can use the Job 1 magic up +1 in addition to the Sage stuff to just really make his magic attack very high. And he can basically nuke anybody because he has wide elemental coverage. Once he does get that Swift Charge though, he does become better, but since we're only limiting this to up to Job 2, he's still good enough to be number 9. Number 8 is going to be Ryle, and if this list happened to be Job 1 only, he would have been number 2 on the list because he's so solid right out of the box. He can do obviously good ranged attacks, he can do single target AoE, he can also inflict status ailments depending on how you build him. But he's not really overpowering in any sense. Like, he won't really carry anybody. He's just solid all around. He's never a bad choice really, but he's never the best choice either, in my opinion. I have seen him in high level arena with like 1 or 2 players doing something magical with him, but he doesn't tend to get that much stronger compared to other characters as he gets other jobs unlocked. But his recommended setup does benefit from his Job 2. He does get perfect evasion as a reactive ability, and some people would also want to consider using feint for that extra chance of surviving. Deep Focus is going to give you the extra damage, but Feint will give you that 30% evasion, which is going to be very useful. And his useful abilities, you can see it for yourself, but Arrow Rain is one of the best AoE abilities in the game. Basically, before he came along, Magnus was kind of monopolizing this whole like 5x5 AoE thing, but Ryle has diluted that a little bit, and he's very good. So that's why he's number 8. Number 7 is going to be Rahu, and she just has 2 really good jobs right out of the well, she has Chronomancer right out of the box, which is, you know, very rare. She's the only one that's like that. But then she also has Bishop, which I prefer to use on her. Overclock is probably the best skill that you can use when you're doing like a Zangetsu strategy, but just for general purpose, I like using Quicken, and you know, you can use that with basic Chronomancy, obviously, and with Bishop as her main job and Holy Magic as her primary skill set, you get access to a whole lot of other things too, like healing and nukes and disables. So she has a really good skill set. They all have to be casted, which is a little bit of a negative, I guess, but you know, it's not really that bad. She can do a ton of stuff, and she's useful every turn. She is squishy. She doesn't really have any survivability compared to Lofia with Divine Shelter or things like that, but if you're smart with her, she can be very effective, obviously. And yeah, she just has so many useful abilities. That's why she's number 7. Number 6 is going to be Magnus. He's just always been all-purpose, all-around good, you know, to bring at job 2. Great for farming still, obviously. He has really good AoE, pretty good single target as well. Although sometimes element wise, like if you want to use Thunder Element to target a water enemy, you pretty much have to stick with his normal attack, because some of his skills are fire based, and you kind of lose that elemental advantage a little bit. And especially when elements matter, he has kind of fallen off in some of the tougher content currently. He's not usable right now, for instance, in the extra level for cannon, because, you know, he's going to do like 200 damage and that's it. But I don't want to hold that against him too hard, because that just happens to be the current state of things. He's still a solid character. You still see him in high level arena. So yeah, he's still good enough to be number 6, although he's just suffering a little bit right now. Number 5 is Rosa, and she is kind of the same case as Magnus, where the content doesn't really favor her. She's not really the star. Dark Element hasn't really been, you know, the answer to anything right now, but it's just so hard to ignore how good she is on paper, at least, because at job 2 she gets Dragon Cavalier, which is very rare. It's an elite job, and she also has good passives from job 1, which, you know, gives her that extra attack from Overlimit. And even with Overlimit on, her defense is not that bad, her agility is not that bad, even though Dragon Cavaliers are slow. So she's all around a solid character. She's not the best at any content right now. Even for that dark farming level before, it was like dark and water. I found myself using Sabaretta actually a lot, but Rosa was obviously a good choice there. She's a decent choice in a lot of places, although right now the elements are so strict that you can't really use her in the new content, but her time to shine is coming, and I don't want to hold anything against her like that, so she's number 5 because she has so much potential. And Grand Cross is my favorite ability in the game right now. Number 4 is Elizabeth, and that's because she has 2 of the best support classes from job 1 and job 2, the other arguably being Bishop, but personally I think Professor is a little bit better right now. Professor can basically do anything that you want a support to do. Like, you can heal and it's instant, you can prevent status ailments, you can heal status ailments, you can inflict status ailments. It's just very, very useful all around. And then Chronomancer, of course, you know, you have Overclock, or you have Quicken, and, you know, even Freeze and all those kinds of things. So she has so many different abilities, so many uses, that I couldn't even pick a recommended setup, because everything's situational with her. It depends on the need. Like, if you want to use her to overclock Zangetsu, obviously you put her as a Chronomancer first, or in other fights when you want to have access to, like, you know, Tranquilizer, Love Potion, things like that, you know, you want to use her as a Professor first. So there's so many setups that work with her, and she's a really, really good support right now. She's not as good as Michael, but he's left off the list because his Professor Plus job is a job plus. It's basically a job 4, so that leaves him off this list. But yeah, I mean, she's the only one that gets those 2 jobs from the first 2. She is slow, which is a downside, and squishy, but she has so many good abilities, it kind of makes up for it. So that's why she's number 4. Number 3 is our boy Vettel. If you only consider the first 2 jobs, he is the best tank right now still, because Magic Swordsman and Holy Cavalier are basically the 2 best. It's like the perfect combination for a tank. And if you don't know, Selena basically has that same combination, but hers is at basically job 2 and job 3, which is why she's not the best tank if you're restricting the job 3s off this list. So tanks are a little bit not as useful anymore as they used to be, but sometimes we still need a tank, and he is the best one at this job level, so that's why he's number 3. Number 2 is Reagan, and he's a rare case of somebody who actually moved up on this list even though he got older, and that's because he's still the only job 2 sniper available, and snipers are still useful. They're not as overpowering as they used to be, where they could just run around and one-shot everything, never get touched. You do have to be a little more careful now with snipers, and enemies don't die in one shot anymore, but they're still useful in any content, whether it's farming or even hard content, and water is still a good element. So it was hard to ignore the fact that as far as job 1s and 2s go, Reagan had to be up here because snipers are still useful. The one change that is a little bit different from last month's is that for the sub ability, I actually would consider bringing the basic chemist skill set, because it's no longer the case where like every turn you should just kill somebody, because you can't really kill everybody in one shot anymore. So sometimes you need to have a way to keep them alive, so maybe you want to use a potion and things like that. So that's why I have an asterisk there. But all in all, pretty much the same thing as last month. It's just that they haven't dropped off enough to hurt Reagan yet. And with the honorable mentions, there's so many characters that could have made this list, but these are just a few. I don't want to go into too much detail, but Selena is pretty tanky, even with her job 1 main and then like a passive from job 2, but her jewel situation is terrible at job 1. Like she'll get like 4 jewels from each normal hit and everything, so she's not as good as Vettel. Until she gets her job 3, then she is better, but yeah, that's why she's not in the top 10 officially. Shenmei and Flammel are on this list because I haven't really been able to use them hands-on too much, so I don't want to make like some kind of uninformed decision and just put them up here. But they seem to be pretty good, especially Shenmei with the leader skill and some useful abilities, but nothing really too OP. I had to put Flammel up here because if I'm gonna put Lofia up here, which I did, and Lofia is basically just a magic swordsman at this point, Flammel has to be here too, because if anything, on paper Flammel's even better with that magic up +1 passive, and Lofia doesn't have any useful second passive as a magic swordsman, so that's why he's up here as well. Cannon is just it's very straightforward, solid character, hard to kill unless you're facing those demons with the defense ignoring stuff, but yeah, very simple but effective. Lucian's up here because with that charge up ability and mobility from Beast Tamer, if you plan to use that instead, he's just very solid and usable even without his job 3. And of course Logi is up here because even as a free-to-play or non-whale, you have the potential to get him up to like level 80 plus. Very solid character. He has good starting jewels, so he can right off the bat use his master ability, spam his skills a little bit, so that's why he's still effective right now, especially in the current event, so that's why he's an honorable mention. And I think number 1 is going to be super obvious for everybody, but I have to say it anyway. Number 1 is of course Shana, because her first job is basically, in my opinion, the best job in global right now, which is Holy Brawler. She gets the best job at her first job, and she doesn't really need anything else. If you look at the recommended setup, everything is from job 1, so that tells you what you need to know. There are no weaknesses with this class, really. Maybe they're vulnerable to magic, but I mean that's the case for a lot of characters. So yeah, dishes out a lot of damage. The ability sets are like really good. They synergize well with each other. Sharpening Focus goes perfectly with cross counter or any follow-up ability. She's just capable of, you know, nuking pretty much anything. Even if she attacks on off elements and she buffs up beforehand, she can still deal respectable damage, so she's useful anywhere. If I had to nitpick about weaknesses, she doesn't really get that much better at job 2 and job 3, other than, you know, maybe getting some stat points from mastering them and everything. I have seen some niche builds where she's kind of like using some basic chronomancy and stuff like that, but then you'd be missing out on sharpening focus, so it's not really ideal in my opinion, unless you're doing it in arena, where the arena AI is not gonna sharpening focus anyway. So job 1 has everything you need. That's why she's number 1, because she's just really good right out of the box, and her leader skill of course is one of the best. So this was an obvious pick, and she's even up there as far as a whale list. If I were to make a top 10 whale list, which I might, I still have like a top 10 in mind, she's still pretty up there. So that tells you what you need to know about her. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. I know that some of you are gonna vehemently disagree with me on some stuff, but I had to put it out there, and you know, hopefully this was useful for some people. So let me know what you think in the comments. Be respectful if you can. Let me know what you think. Again, my opinions are not too swayed by what other people say, as far as like if JP says something I must follow. Like, I'm not like that. I'm more of a hands-on guy, and I pretty much form my own opinions, but I am interested to see what other people say, because you know, sometimes they'll think of things that I haven't thought of and so forth. So anyway, take care guys, hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna cut this off before it gets too long, and I'll see you guys next time.